Hey everybody. So I know people tell me not to address these comments when they come through, but I want to. I want to keep addressing these things because I don't ever want to go back into the mindset where I'm running from these things. And the only way that I know of to do that is to confront them head on when they come along. So when somebody takes the time to write as elaborate a comment as this person has, I'm going to try to answer it. So here goes. This is from Obsidikis Necrosine. Kudos for a cool black metal screen name. Anyway, it says, Jordan, I will say this as charitably as I can. You're having trouble moving on from this Sierra Effect video because you still haven't dealt with the root of the issue. What is that? Well, that Harris has a lot of valid points. You can take issue with his delivery of the message, but not with its substance. No, I did an entire video already going through point by point every single point that he made. I pointed out where he was lying about what my actual positions were, or unreasonably distorting what my positions were, or unreasonably reading into it what I was trying to say, where he manipulated video footage, where he tried to make it sound like I was saying things I was not actually saying. The idea that there could be valid points delivered with that level of dishonesty is patently absurd. I have, if you will watch my video commentary on this topic, I have done an extraordinary amount of personal reflection and personal cogitation on all of these matters. And you might have noticed I took a long hiatus from regular YouTube blogging, and part of that has been, that sabbatical, if you will, has been me trying to reevaluate everything that I had criticized in the past and trying to come to some kind of peace with these things. And the simple fact of the matter is I can't do it. I can sit there and pretend, I can sit there and smile and put on a happy face and pretend to go along with things, but after a certain point, I just can't do that anymore. If I think something is wrong, I think it's wrong. And there's this constant, and this is going to be the theme in this message, there's this constant thing of being on the right side of history, and, don't you want to be on the winning team and all of that. I have to be on the side of what I think is right. And I know it sounds cliche to say, but in Nazi Germany, being opposed to Adolf Hitler was very much the minority point of view. Just because you've got a popular upswing right now does not mean that you are on the right track or that you are going to be historically revered. So anyway, goes on to say, the truth is that society as a whole only moves in one direction, forwards. Sometimes the pace is glacially slow, at other times dizzying, but it does not backtrack. Never happens, never will. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Right now, there are many, many people in this country that are pushing for socialist, Marxist, and communist systems that have failed over and over again, all over the world. They have failed, they continue to fail, and they keep pushing for them. The forward march of the 20th century has been born largely out of an embrace of capitalism. And I know that sounds bizarre, I know that makes you scoff, I know that makes you do a double take or whatever, but that's the reality. The cornerstone of a society where everybody is able to live together and function together and get along and accept one another is a society that lacks, that to the largest extent possible lacks scarcity and has a tremendous amount of economic support. When you take desperation out of the equation, then you will see a reduction in the kind of tribalist attitudes that have pushed people apart, that push people into separate categories rather than being able to live together. That's the reality of it. And I'm sorry, but that's having a different perspective on moving forward is not the same thing as wanting to move backwards. And you can't, you don't seem to be able to understand that. Anyway, the truth is, prudish attitudes fade and outdated ideas die, and when someone tries to resurrect them, they tend to get stomped. Okay, so that... I'm not trying to resurrect outdated ideas. Again, the people who are trying to bring back socialism are the ones that are trying to resurrect outdated ideas. I know there's more to this than my economic views, but being pro-capitalist is very much is historically speaking, in the broad spectrum of human endeavor, is a very avant-garde, very vanguard, very forward, progressive mode of interacting and a mode of being. And what's funny is the left, which I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you seem to be on the left. The left is coming to a point where they are actually getting regressive. They are the ones who are pushing nowadays pushing the idea that the most critical defining factor about a person is their race or their gender or whatever sets them apart from being a straight white male, or conversely being a straight white male is the most important factor there is. That is an unbelievably backwards, primitive, tribalistic, dogmatic attitude to have. And the left are the ones pushing for it. There's a reason this term regressive left has come about, because they are no longer progressive. They no longer want to move forward. And most critical to that is a complete absence of any kind of tolerance for any sort of nuanced point of view or any dissent or any disagreement. Just like this, you can't understand how my point of view would differ from some kind of radical extremist on the far right, apparently. And I'll be honest with you, man. It's the weirdest thing in the world, but it's like I am not a Trump supporter. I'm going to do a video about why I refuse to vote for Donald Trump in 2020. I will do another one about why I refuse to vote for Joe Biden, most likely. I'm still back and forth on that. But anyway, on whether or not I'll vote for him. But as regards... where was I? As regards Donald Trump, I am not a Trump supporter at all. I think he is a vile person. I think he is despicable. I think South Park got it right. We're all dating Eric Cartman right now. But here's the thing. Nowadays, when I go to meet a new person, whether it's a new potential business associate or a new potential, personal associate or whatever, if I walk up to them, if I see a Trump-Pence bumper sticker on their car, what I think is, I probably won't agree with this person on very much, but at least they won't dive down my throat if they find out we disagree on something. That has been my experience. It's not the experience on the internet. On the internet, everybody jumps down everybody's throat about everything. I'm talking about, in reality, that's what I encounter. People that I can peacefully, amicably disagree with, versus when I'm dealing with someone that's on the left, I now just go into the situation thinking, and so anyway, prudish attitudes fade. I think it was Michael Malice, the author, who, and I bring him up. I know him as a writer on the situation in North Korea, and that's it. I don't know the rest of his politics, so please try not to dive down the rabbit hole. Anyway, I think it was Michael Malice who said that the level, what society gets prudish about changes, but the level of prudery remains constant. And I think that Shelby Steele in White Guilt actually offered an example that really, this just comes to mind. This is not bringing the larger scope of White Guilt into this discussion, but I think he brings up a good point. In White Guilt, he talked about, I want to say it was Eisenhower or Roosevelt or something, a president from somewhere in the early 20th century America, earlier 20th century America, and then he brings up Bill Clinton, and he said this earlier president, like I said, I can't remember exactly who it was rumored to have said the N-word while he was in office. And meanwhile, Bill Clinton was, exposed as having this sordid sex life while he was in office. Okay, back then, if that president back here had said the N-word in office, that would not have jeopardized his presidency. But if he had had an extramarital affair, it definitely would have. Flash forward 40, 50, 60 years, and Bill Clinton saying the N-word in office would have definitely ended his presidency, but having an extramarital affair did not. And that really is the essence of it. You think you're on the right side of history because what you believe is on an upsurge right now, but it's going to keep spiraling. It's going to keep going around and around. The level of prudery remains constant. And I've done commentary in the past on pornography and the sex industry, as a sex workers' rights advocate, and that sort of thing. And that's somewhere where they just keep passing the baton. You have society goes through phases where it's opposed to pornography for deeply religious reasons, and then it goes through phases where it's opposed to pornography for deeply secular progressive reasons. But the functionality of it, of being opposed to pornography, just stays constant. So no, just because you believe, just because the views you have seem to be on the ascendancy right now, does not mean that they are going to be that they're going to remain that way forever. I just watched the HBO original movie And the Band Played On, which is it's a docudrama about the early days of the AIDS crisis, the HIV/AIDS crisis. And it's very eye-opening. It came out in the early '90s. It's very eye-opening to watch now, because it's how to put this? It's very eye-opening to watch now because it really underscores how little they knew about what AIDS was back then. Early on, they actually thought it was, because so many of the people getting it were speed freaks, they thought it was it had to do with abusing speed. Things like that. Anyway, the point being, the 1960s ushered in an era of free love, very liberal, loose, liberal, progressive, I don't want to say progressive, but very liberal, tolerant attitudes about open displays of sexuality and open sexual exploration. And while that is generally where my attitude about sex would be, I have a very liberal attitude about sexuality. The explosion of HIV and AIDS in the 1980s ushered in an era of very radically different attitudes about how people were approaching sex. Different sociological movements come and go. Anyway, so the idea that they don't backtrack, no, people reposition and reevaluate all the time. And the problem is there's no distinction between wanting to barrel forward into a world, now the false dichotomy that's presented is people want to say that you can barrel forward into a world of some sort of socialist utopia, or launch yourself backwards into a nostalgic fantasy realm of Leave It to Beaver and Stepford Wives and that sort of thing. No, that's not what we're doing. Society will always move forward. We have to, C.S. Lewis had a quote that I absolutely love where he said, "We all want progress, but if we've gone down the wrong road, progress means taking an about face and getting back on the right road. And in that case, the man who turns back first is the most progressive." And that really does highlight it. We're always moving forward, and we generally don't abandon our, we don't abandon our new awareness of new ideas once they're on the table, but that doesn't mean that how the direction society defaults to is automatically the right one. If you look at the course of history, the social default is nearly always the wrong one. and it takes some kind of catastrophic event to make people reevaluate how they want to reintegrate these new ideas into their existence. And my attitude is, let's reevaluate before we get to the catastrophic event. So I don't see that as stepping back. I see that as continually trying to talk about how we can best move forward. Anyway, so the society you live in is one moving towards general acceptance of things you seem to hate. Now, this is interesting because you're going to accuse me of hating things I've never expressed hatred towards. Your opinions are those of a minority. Again, anti-Hitler sentiment was a minority point of view in Nazi Germany. That did not mean it was wrong. And again, I know that's Godwin's law. I know it's the most obvious example. It's the most obvious cornerstone of evil to come out of the 20th century. Anyway, that was a minority point of view. That did not make it wrong. The society, most people don't agree. Now, pay close attention to what he says here. Most people don't agree that feminism, gay marriage, multiculturalism, or transgenderism are a negative force that has to be fought against. I am pro-gay marriage. I've always been pro-gay marriage. You will not be able to find one thing in the entirety of my YouTube videos, or in the entirety of anything that I have ever said that is anti-gay marriage. In fact, in 2012, I had this book come out, Eros Empire, which was makes statements, even though it was not gay, the gay lifestyle was not the primary focus of it. It is a novel championing free love and liberal attitudes towards sexuality, and it came out and makes very bold, very outspoken statements in favor of and acceptance of homosexuality as a valid practice. And I am pro-gay marriage. You cannot find an area where I have ever said that I was not pro-gay marriage. And I'm sure you probably have fixated on something I said that you interpreted to mean that I was opposed to gay marriage, but I'm not. So please present it. Tell me what you come across with, what you actually think I believe, and I'll be glad to correct it. Now, multiculturalism, it depends what you mean. I don't have a problem with people from different cultures living together. I don't have a problem with building a nation around the idea of people from different cultural backgrounds coming together. I think that's great. Especially as an artist, as a writer, a musician, and I'm self-taught digital artist, but I don't hang my hat on that. Anyway, as a writer and a musician, multiculturalism is of endless benefit to me, because I want to get I don't want to just, I would feel stifled as a musician, for example, if I was only able to do music from some kind of Indo-European background. For Christ's sake, I went to college. I went to one of the, actually, I think the best, but definitely one of the best jazz music schools in the entire world. I did not rack up a tremendous amount of debt studying jazz music so that I could, because I was somehow opposed to multiculturalism. I am not. Now, the question then becomes, do I think that there are cultures out there that are superior and inferior across many metrics? Yes. So, for example, I saw a documentary one time about a rainforest tribe in the jungles of Peru, where they have a practice of taking boys aged 10 to 11 and burying them alive as part of their religious sacrifices. They bury them alive and let them die. Okay, I don't mind and the Peruvian government doesn't want to get involved because they don't want to interfere with an indigenous culture. Well, I don't have a problem telling you I think that culture sucks. I don't like the idea of burying people alive for religious practices or for any reason. That's absolutely horrifying. It's absolutely disgusting, and I do not support that in any way, shape, or form. And I don't mind saying that I think a culture that doesn't practice that is morally superior to a culture that does. Now, I know what you probably want to come back with is something to do with the United States' horrible history of human rights violations, to which I will say we are a country that acknowledges those things and does the best we can to move forward. And that doesn't mean we can wave a magic wand and make everything be perfect instantly, but we try to move forward. And that trying to move forward and trying to do better is what makes us a morally superior country. No country has a clean track record, but the willingness to do better makes us morally superior. So, asking me if I hate multiculturalism, it depends what you mean. And hate is also a strong word. Hate to me implies seething with rage and fury. You don't seem to have a concept of somebody just disagreeing with something. I mean, the main thing that the main thing that I want to, I'm not gonna elaborate on that further. I think I've said it. I think I've gone into it enough. Then feminism. Okay, it depends. Again, it depends what you mean. I will refer you to my novel Eros Empire, in which one of the characters makes a very long and I think very eloquent speech elaborating on what feminism should be versus what it's become. There are principles and ideas within feminism that are important and are indeed cornerstones of a forward-moving society. But the behavior of modern feminists and the mutant creature that feminism has become, absolutely not. And we can champion. It's totally possible and totally acceptable to say that you want these good things and not these bad things. So I don't think we live in a patriarchy. When I'll modify that to say the reason I don't think that is because we don't. We don't live in a patriarchy. And so if disagreeing with that does not mean that you are actively, openly hating something. This is again one of those things where I look at the claims that are made, and anytime I look at claims that people make, I will look at the information that seeks to debunk those claims, because you should not take anything flatly at face value. You should do your research, you should do your due diligence, and come to an actual informed position. As my favorite author, Harlan Ellison, likes to say, people are not entitled to their opinion, they're entitled to their informed opinion. No one has the right to be ignorant. And so, for example, to pull an example, the Ms. Magazine rape study that found a claim to find that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 women will be raped in her lifetime. That has been roundly and completely debunked over and over and over again. So much so that Mary Koss, who organized that study and oversaw that study, had to come out and admit that it was bogus, that it was fallacious, that. Or she didn't use the word fallacious, but had to admit that it was not done well and had to retract the legitimacy of it. But a lie gets halfway around the earth before the truth has time to put on its pants, and that statistic gets trotted out over and over again, even though it's not true. Do I have a problem with people who think that it's acceptable to interrupt presenters at a peaceful gathering by pulling fire alarms and throwing things and rushing the stage and attacking the presenters? Yeah, I have a problem with that. I don't care if it's done in the name of feminism. I have a problem with activist professors that present absolute flagrant bullshit to their students with things that are demonstrably untrue. I use, for example, I've commented a lot on a woman named Gail Dines. I'm sure you're aware of that. That she lies over and over again. All she does is lie. And she is capable of doing exactly one thing, and that is falsifying the truth. And I don't care that she's claiming to do it in the name of the good of women or for the betterment of women. So if you can separate... if you can, you don't seem to be able to chew gum and walk at the same time. You can want things to move forward and be better, while at the same time opposing people who manipulate the forward intention for their own gain, or manipulate it to attack their own personal biases or promote their own prejudices or their own bigotries. That is something you should do. You should be. To me, saying that you're opposed to rights for women, equal rights for women, or opposed to women's rights because you're opposed to women like Gail Dines, is like saying that you're opposed to health because you're opposed to healthy human bodies because you believe in cutting out tumors. I mean, it's absolutely patently absurd. And so you seem to be stuck on the idea that because something is because somebody disagrees with people representing a concept, then that by its very definition somehow means that you're opposed to the concept as a whole. It's an absolute Kafka trap. Anyway, and then transgenderism. Again, I'm not opposed to transgenderism. Go find me in all of my commentary anything where I have said that I'm opposed to transgenderism. I'm not. Now, you might be tempted to say, well, if you're not opposed to these things, why did you work with this person or that person? Why are you friendly with this person or that person? Because, again, maybe I'm just of a completely different generation, but I am simply of the opinion that just disagreeing with people on these things does not, in and of itself, mean that you can't be friends with them, that you can't associate with them. Now, don't get me wrong. I have learned a very hard lesson that if you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas, and that is not lost on me. There is a limiting factor, and everybody knows exactly what that limiting factor is. But there is a limiting point in all of that. But generally speaking, I don't have to agree with everybody on everything to be friends with them. And again, the fact that that's my principle, I feel more relaxed around people who are kind of center-right, and I feel completely on. I don't think there's a center-left anymore, but I feel if there was, that would be where I position myself. But on the large scale, it's center-right, extreme right, and then just extreme left all the way. And people center-right, I feel people on the extreme right make me uncomfortable. People on the center-right, I can generally associate with and just have a pleasant, enjoyable interaction. People on the extreme left go completely batshit insane the nanosecond you nudge them the wrong way. And then you go on, but the transgenderism, more specifically, it's funny you bring that up, because I'm about to do a video on the book Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier, which is about the current transgender craze affecting teenage girls. And what's going to be interesting, in that video, I'm going to sit there and explain the difference between what's being said in this book and actual being in support of actual trans people, and trying to make a very specific designation there that for most people, when they hear it, whether they agree with it or not, is not going to sound that extreme. It's not going to sound very right of center or very far outside the realm of acceptable human thought. But for you, who can't seem to understand the difference between, you who has no concept of nuance, who can't seem to find any degrees of difference between love and hate, who doesn't seem to understand that these are not things that these are not issues that are tied to large-scale emotions like loving or hating, but are rather more about an ongoing process of rational debate and rational discussion. You're going to probably perceive that video to be all in for hatred of trans people, even though that's absolutely not my intention. And I will give you, at the risk of TMI, I will give you this disclaimer on that, as I'm going to put in the actual video. But look up Vanity with 2 eyes, look up Bailey J, look up B. Armitage, B-E-E, like the insect Armitage. Okay, those are three of the, in my mind, 3 of the most beautiful women in adult film, and I would do everything with those women. If I felt like I was in a situation that was medically safe and hygienic and all of that, I would be willing to do everything with those women and would have no hesitation about it. So having said that, at the risk of extreme personal embarrassment to myself, I defy you to explain how I am anti-trans. Anyway, then your fight against the tide of history, you're fighting against the tide of history, and it's not a battle you can win. You should re-examine what led you where you are and work on that. As the famous line from American History X goes, has anything you've done made your life better? So now you're putting me in the company of neo-Nazis. Look, again, in all of this, I defy you to point to what I'm actually talking about. And yeah, if you point to it, I'm going to sit there and tell you where you're wrong. Because you are wrong. Because you are assuming things that I don't believe. I know what I believe. And my experience was being shouted down and castigated and hit with cancel culture by a lot of people who could not, who were bold and determined to put words in my mouth with things I never said, things I don't believe. I had, and although I'm not putting myself on his level in terms of notoriety, I had an experience very similar to what Jordan Peterson went through, where every time you open your mouth, people go running hog wild, trying to figure out the most heinous, vile, evil interpretation of it they can possibly have. So please, tell me what you think I said that is in any way comparable to the extraordinarily vile, disgusting beliefs that are held by the protagonist character in American History X when he hears that those comments from his former high school teacher. And I will be glad to tell you where you're wrong. But that's what it's going to be. I'm not going to sit there and pretend to hold ideas I don't hold or that I never held simply because it would convince you that I've somehow seen the error of my ways. I have been through the absolute psychological ringer dealing with the repercussions of what it's like to have every single thing you say blow up on the internet in some vile, bastardized misinterpretation that in no way, shape, or form reflects what you actually said. So please specify and I'll be glad to put you right. Then he says, P.S. You're 26, you say, or thereabouts. I'll be 37 in September. You are too young to think your life is over. I'm 53 and have a ton of projects and things I want to do, even though I'll very likely be dead in the next 10 to 20 years without completing a tenth of them. But you have plenty of time to sort yourself out, but you need to confront the fact that you do need to sort yourself out. Okay, once again, I want specifics. Go exactly to what it is that I need to sort myself out about. Because what we're going to come down to is, I think what we're going to come down to is just the idea that you can't deal with the fact that there's people who disagree with you. I think that's what it's ultimately going to come down to. You are going to, and what's going to happen is, you're going to hit me with a bunch of things that I've said at some point, and well, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to accuse me of saying a bunch of things. I'm going to deny saying those things and ask you to provide where exactly I said those things. Then you're going to come back with quotes that don't mean the thing that you think they mean. I'm going to explain to you the context of what I was saying or how I meant it or what I was actually trying to say, and you're just going to incredulously ignore it. But if you want to do that, if you want to go through that process, I'll be glad to do it. Please tell me, what is it you think I've said or done that puts me on such a heinous neo-Nazi, such a heinous level that you feel comfortable comparing me to a neo-Nazi? And so, sorting yourself out, what I've had to do is make peace with the fact that I'm never going to, I cannot pretend to believe things I don't believe. That's I'm not going to say there are 5 lights. Look up the 4 lights analogy to get what I mean with that. But I'm not going to do it. I've tried. It just makes me miserable. It just makes me tense and irritable and angry and depressed. I can't do it. I can't do it. I've made peace with the fact that it's possible I will lose work. It's possible I will lose social status. It's possible that I will lose friends and fail to influence people. All of these things are all these things are possible. But I have to hold on to the idea that that's going to be clearing the path for the people that will listen to what I have to say, and will embrace it, or will embrace an actual understanding of what I actually mean. And then PPS. This is wild to me. PPS, a little writing advice from one writer to another, which I got from another author whose name I cannot recall but will paraphrase. You can't write with concerns about what your wife, your mother, or your best friend think. Ignore those gargoyles peering over your shoulder. Same applies to Harris for you. So after this long soliloquy telling me that I need to take to heart the points that he was making and seriously reevaluate my life, you're going to close by telling me to ignore what he's saying. I think that kind of says it all.